Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Why I'm No Longer a Californian, posted by Cultural Cupcake 707, and that was the same image they posted at the end of the last that I talked about at the end of the last episode, where he posted how many times will CA try same thing, expect different results. This is looks like some hippie guy with a hammer that says progressive policies, and he's hammering himself in the head with it. And he's looking miserable and says cost of living crisis is breaking point in the newspaper. Behind him are all a bunch of homeless people. And it says maybe this time will work. And then the OP added vote comment share if even Gavin Newsom should try freedom for a change. And I'd agree with that. Reddit, of course, since Gavin Newsom is this great, awesome guy because he's in the in group rather than the out group, but of course, he's just a tyrant in blue rather than red, and that's really much the libertarian position on the issue. The libertarian position is we don't care if tyrants are, or what color tyrants use, red, blue, even the libertarian yellow. Tyrants are tyrants and need to be treated as such, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Next, we have centralized government versus states' rights versus individual liberty, Texas, New York, the U.S. Constitution, a doctor and an abortion, from TexasMonthly.com, posted by XGH Ty 737, and that looks like an article. He just wanted to modernize the DMV, then Ken Paxton sued him, and yeah, personally, I think, ultimately states should have the right to do whatever they want, but the libertarian position is you need to focus on individual rights rather than states' rights. Just because the government is smaller than the federal level doesn't mean it's any better. Just because local government is the smallest form of government doesn't mean it can't be tyrannical. You need to stand up against authoritarianism at all levels of government, be it in the federal government, the state government, or local government, or any other form of government like the globalist UN and all that. It's the libertarian position is, the individual liberty is really all that matters. Anything else is forced collectivism. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have fascism and the Republican Party. They mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers, from Politico.com, posted by Helpful Feeding, and that's the story from Politico that Politico put out, I think, yesterday. I love Hitler. Leaked messages expose young Republicans' racist chat. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for that. That sounds like them just edgelording and jerking themselves around. But, regardless, Reddit, of course, is going to say it's the worst thing ever and that everyone in there should resign immediately, even though, you could easily find stuff edgier than this on Reddit. And besides that, Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Attorney General in the upcoming Virginia Attorney General election, he posted a lot of edgy stuff. He texted a lot of edgy stuff to another guy. And what did Reddit do? It swept it under the rug. But now the out group's doing edgy stuff in a group chat rather than the in group, and suddenly it's the worst thing ever. And it just goes to show you, Reddit only cares when Reddit can say whatever it wants about the out group, but if the out group says the same things back, suddenly it's the worst thing ever. And it just goes to show you that, people don't really care whatever people are saying, rather who says it about who. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Next we have U.S. House Speaker calls Portland naked bike ride most threatening thing I've ever seen. Put from OregonLive.com, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the Not the Onion subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't think that's the most. I would disagree with Mike Johnson's assertion there, but ultimately, I don't think people should be bike riding naked. But ultimately, if they want to do that, they should be able to. With that being said, I know if this was a bunch of Republicans bike riding naked, Reddit would say oh, it's indecent exposure. They could be passing by children, and that just proves all the GOP are pedophiles. But when the in-group does it rather than the out-group, Reddit thinks it's the greatest thing ever. And it just goes to show you that Reddit has no values at this point other than in-group good, out-group bad, as pretty much every post of theirs indicates. Next, we have $20 billion gift of American tax dollars from the GOP declared king to the ANCAP hero, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross-post from the Blue Sky Skeets subreddit. Make America, that post is entitled Make Argentina Great Again. That looks like a Blue Sky post from Ron Filipowski, who tweeted, "Walking away with $20 billion of U.S. taxpayer money so Scott Bessent's Wall Street cronies don't lose their investments in Argentina." And yeah, personally, I would agree that, I personally think Milei is probably one of the better world leaders in regards to libertarianism. But regardless, I don't think the U.S. should be throwing money at taxpayer money in any other country. And that, I don't think they should be giving Ukraine money, taxpayer money, or resources, or Israel. And those two both probably have a better case since they were actually attacked by other groups. But Argentina, ultimately the people in charge were just by sending their money, taxpayer money, wherever they feel like spending it on, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. The government has the legal monopoly and use of force, and that's why I personally don't really care for the taxation as a whole. I think if we would have voluntary taxation where people could earmark their money to go to causes they want to support, I think that'd be fine. But right now, you're forced to pay taxes. You don't even know where the money's going to. It could be going to Argentina, it could be going to Israel, it could be going to Ukraine, it could be going to Mars for all we know. And it just goes to show you that it's very much the government shouldn't be deciding what it can and can't do with your money. That should be your decision. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Next, we have Man's Rights from courses.aynrand.org, posted by Fear the Creeper. And yeah, personally, I do think man's rights are important. Of course, Reddit's not going to like Ayn Rand since she's more out-group coded than in-group coded. But regardless, it just goes to show you that, Reddit doesn't like anyone to dissent from the official narrative at all. Reddit increasingly doesn't believe that man has rights at all, only obligations to fulfill the progressive narrative, and that's very much how Reddit seems to operate. Reddit used to be quite the libertarian platform, but now it's much more a progressive circle jerk platform, if anything else. Next, we have 13-year-old boy arrested by ICE in Massachusetts and transferred over 500 miles from family. After waiting for an hour and a half for her son to be released to her, the boy's mother was told he was instead transferred to an ICE facility in another state from Reason.com, posted by CH4Locks, and that's cross-post from the We the Fifth subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for that, but, ultimately the state can justify doing whatever it wants to any person because they have the legal monopoly on the use of force, and it just goes to show you that, it doesn't really matter what laws are written down, it matters how laws are actively enforced, and since the state has the discretion and since the law enforcement has the discretion to operate however it feels like, ultimately they can justify pretty much whatever, and since the state controls the court systems as well, oftentimes, there's no means to hold them accountable either. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Next we have, why is the Libertarian always on the right? Posted by Cooter HD, and they said, so first of all, I'm not from the US, I'm from Germany, so my understanding of politics might be a bit influenced by the European view of the US. To me, the Libertarian idea stems from individual freedom. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this. At least from my perspective, the right seems to circumcise these a lot more than the left. From topics like gay marriage and structural racism or even the domestic foreign market relationship, the libertarian answer often finds itself in the left rather than the political right. Often, of course, there are exceptions, an important one being gun regulation, although currently to me it doesn't seem like the Republican Party is focusing on liberty and gun ownership. The right also tends to be often benefit bigger companies, will be at loopholes or just straight governmental benefits. Then in return leads to a very monopolistic market, which, at least my understanding, isn't really libertarian at core. I was just curious about some thoughts about this. Please, I'm seriously not trying to troll, I'm just curious. And I would agree with all that. I think libertarians are more right-coded than left-coded personally because, that's very much the groups who co-opted the word. It's very much why liberal, a very similar word kind of, is very much more left-coded than right-coded. But regardless, I think the libertarian position is, it shouldn't be left or right. I think Spike Gowen had a good tweet a while ago. He says, a lot of people think libertarian is economically conservative, socially liberal, and that's not true. We're economically your business and socially your business, justify doing whatever you want to. That's very much the libertarian position. If that being said, libertarians are going to often be times right-coded because they dissent from the official progressive narrative at all, especially in regards to Reddit. And you're not allowed to do that these days. But you can just as easily say that in some instances libertarians are left-coded, in regards to abortion freedom and all that. Personally, there are some libertarians who want abortion laws, and I think that's completely reasonable. But, ultimately, I do think the libertarian perspective is you shouldn't be enforcing your values on other people. And even if you think abortion is murder, just because you don't like murder doesn't mean you should if someone's going to justify murder, you can try and stop and hope they fail, but just because ultimately people are going to justify what they justify. I think that's a big part of the libertarian mindset, and I think that's important to remember as well. Next, we have furious MAGA customers say they got scammed by Trump watches from thedailybeast.com, posted by Mundane Image 13. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for Trump. I think his whole stuff is just a massive grift, just like pretty much all politics is. But I'm sure that if Reddit was, Reddit never only calls out the Republicans for being grifters, I would say in a lot of ways the Democrats are grifters as well, but Reddit doesn't care. You can go on AOC's website and buy a Tax the Rich sweatshirt, and that's kind of a grift as well. But Reddit doesn't. Reddit only cares that the out group is grifters, even though I would argue the in group has a lot of grifters as well. Maybe not to the same scale, especially if how big Trump's cold personality is. But I would say definitely it's still a problem on the in group for the in group as well as the out group. At least, yeah. And we have Massey posts best fundraising number of career after defying Trump on key issues from thehill.com, posted by Jedi Porcupine. And I personally really like Thomas Massey. I personally don't, I haven't voted for a major party candidate since 2022. But, if he gets the Republican presidential nomination, I might make an exception. But with that being said, I think IPAC will prevent that from ever happening, since he's not in Israel's pockets, and Israel has the biggest foreign lobby of them all. I think, he'll be slammed for relentless propaganda if he ever does throw his hat in the ring to run for president. Next, we have Where the Democrats Want Our Gun, Folks, posted by Manconda413, and that's a tweet from the National Association for Gun Rights, and they tweeted, the ATF has a secret contract with a vendor to digitize millions of legacy gun purchase records to be built an illegal national gun registry. Watch at Gun Rights Press break down how they are doing it and what you can do to help stop it. And yeah, personally, it just goes to show you that, the Republicans might market themselves as better on guns than the Democrats, but, the uniparty is pretty much always two sides of the same shitty coin, and they use these wedge issues to divide people, when in reality, they agree on, 95% of their policy positions, and this is just one of those examples. Next, we have ICE ticket to Chicago man, $130 for not having his papers with him, from ChicagoTribune.com. Posted by Ragnar OKXG, and they had, are we the fucking USSR? And I'd agree with that. Personally, I think, the government shouldn't be ticketing people for not having their papers on them. But, ultimately, the government has, as I said, the legal monopoly in these sports, justify doing whatever it wants to, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Next, we have Bezent says U.S. considers doubling aid to Argentina to $40 billion. The grift never ends, from Politico.com, posted by CH4Locks. And yeah, personally, I don't, as I said, I don't think taxpayer-funded dollars should be going to any other country or any other cause that people don't support. But ultimately, the government can throw taxpayer dollars at whatever thing they want to, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Next, we have Trump administration will set price floors across range of industries to combat China, Bezent says, from CNBC.com, posted by LegioX. And yeah, personally, I don't think the U.S. government should be setting price floors or price caps on anything. I think that goes against the free market. But as I said, ultimately they have the pretty much the authority to do so, since they have the legal monopoly and the force to justify controlling the market however they feel like. And I don't really care for that, but that's just a sad reality of the current situation. And let's see if there's anything else. Looks like that's it. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.